BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast, your indispensable guide to all the stories that matter in the national game. It's Thursday, the 21st of March. I'm Jonathan Sutherland, and here's what's coming up.
I think these two games are more about, showing what we can do, particularly in the first game, against the top teams. We want to try and compete against the best. Yeah, these games are probably more about developing as a team, and and hopefully we can do that.
We get the latest from the Scotland camp ahead of Friday's friendly with the Netherlands, before turning our attention to domestic matters.
And the Dundee United fans, there's a fair few of them, have seen enough. Psychologically, this could be really, really damning for Dundee United and Jim Goodwin.
After disappointment in Dunfermline, can Dundee United put daylight between themselves and Wraith Rovers at the top of the Championship? And
Hancock gets it into the middle, Brazil! Brilliant header! Airdrie get on the score sheet.
Can Airdrie get their hands on some silverware?
This is the Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
We are joined today on the Scottish Football Podcast by the Clyde manager Ian McCall and the BBC Sport Scotland journalist and commentator Thomas Duncan. Hello to you both. Ian McCall, if I can start with you. Scotland up against the Netherlands in Amsterdam, always a tough place to go. Will you be able to concentrate on it though, or will you be too busy plotting the destruction or maybe just the demise of Spartans the next day?
Well, I don't plot anymore. My days of plotting are long gone. I'll be watching. I'm looking forward to it. The last time we were there, I remember seeing Faddy score at Hampden when we beat them 1-0. Although it was a deflection, I've always said to him it was a deflection. And then they went over there, but that was a proper Dutch side that beat us 6-0. And I think we've got a far better side now. I'm really looking forward to that game on Friday night, and my own game no doubt will take care of itself on the Saturday.
Good stuff, Ian. As for you, Thomas, how will you be taking in Scotland's match away at the Netherlands?
From the exotic climes of Pacific Quay in Glasgow. I'll be working in the office for the game. But looking forward to it. Obviously, they're one of the top nations in Europe, and Scotland are obviously fancying themselves against anyone at the moment, the way they're going. So should be a cracking game, a cracking atmosphere as well over in the Amsterdam arena.
We'll get into more about Scotland versus the Netherlands very soon with Ian and Thomas. But before all of that, let's rattle through the latest Scottish football headlines. Motherwell have written to the Scottish FA following their league defeat to Aberdeen last weekend, seeking clarification over the handball rule. Lennon Miller had a goal ruled out against the Dons for a handball in the build-up by Theo Bair. They've also questioned the decision not to award Motherwell a penalty after the ball struck Graham Shinney's arm in the Aberdeen box. Celtic midfielder Rio Hatate is back in training and could be back in the league leaders starting 11 as soon as a week on Sunday when the Parkhead team play away at Livingston. He played 45 minutes in a 2-2 bounce game against St Mirren last night at Lennoxtown, and Hatate return would be a massive shot in the arm for Celtic's title hopes. Jim Goodwin has said he can't offer new contracts to his players until he knows which league Dundee United will be playing in next season. The players, my staff and myself all have a responsibility to get this club promoted, and if we do that, he says, we can sit down in the summer and talk about what the long-term future holds.
The Scottish Football Podcast.
Right. We're going to get to Scotland very soon and talk about the Championship since it's a Thursday as well. But let's kick off with this Motherwell writing to the SFA over clarification of the handball rule after a couple of controversial incidents at the weekend. Stuart Kettlewell not at all happy after they had a goal ruled out after Theo Bair was adjudged to have handballed it before Lennon Miller put the ball in the net. And then down at the other end, Graham Shinney, the ball did strike his arm, but then they didn't get a penalty. Ian McCall, you're across both of the incidents. First and foremost, what did you make of the incidents?
I thought the first one, the Bair handball that led to the goal, or I call it handball, I thought that was ridiculous. But I thought it was a crazy decision. The Shinney one, I mean, it would have been, I think that would have been harsh if it had been given. But again, it's how we interpret the handball rule. I think people do know the rules because, they're written there. I think it's how people interpret it. And I've got to say as well, what we need to remember is that I manage down the levels now, and I can assure you that without VAR, we're getting a lot of really, really poor decisions as well. But I think sometimes you accept it a bit better, even though you're raging at the time. We've had 2 or 3 against us, a couple for us. But because it's human error, by the time you get to Sunday, you're still gutted and raging, but it's human error, and you get on with it. So there's still many, many bad decisions getting made outside when we don't have the use of VAR. But I do that, going back to the Bayern one, that he's not even aware of the ball coming off the back of his arm, and it's the slightest touch. I thought that was a crazy one. In terms of Motherwell writing to the SFA, we have a meeting with referees every year when they go any adjustments to the rules, and I think Maxwell was ill-advised to say what he said, but I'm not sure he's not got a point, because I've got to share it. I don't think we all know every rule, the managers. I mean,
this is Ian Maxwell. You're referring to, obviously, the SFA Chief Executive Ian Maxwell, who'd come out earlier in the week basically telling managers and clubs to stop this blame culture of VAR, and also to kind of also get more knowledgeable about the laws of the game, I think was part of the message, talking about how they must work together to alleviate unsustainable pressure on match officials and VAR operators. So, but you feel he was ill-advised to say that, Ian?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think at the time when there's been, we thought VAR would tidy up a lot of these decisions. So when it's not happening like that, I think that's probably the wrong time to say that. I'm not saying he hasn't got a point about them, but we all know the basic rules of football. You guys know them, the managers know them, the coaches know them, the fans know them. But I think the little bits and bobs that are hidden in paragraph 3, subsection 2, number 1, I'm not sure all the managers know them. I know I certainly don't. And I've been at many of these meetings when after half an hour you kind of switch off, because it's rather dull. But I think they're angry because VAR was supposed to. We got all these mistakes in the lower leagues and good decisions as well. But I think VAR was supposed to tidy all that up so the obvious ones were called correctly. And although that happens sometimes, it doesn't happen all the time. And I think the Theo Bair one was a really good example of that. I don't think anybody could look at that. And there's been a few, as you guys know better than me, I don't think anybody can look at that and say categorically that was a foul, or that goal shouldn't have been given. And it was quite a big goal in the contest of Motherwell season.
I know these seminars can be a bit dull, but isn't it incumbent on players and managers to, I guess, have a pretty sure grasp of the laws of the game?
I mean, listen, but I mean, if you ever looked at the book, the rule book, I mean, it's like reading Ovid's Metamorphoses. It's not a 3-page thing. There's an awful lot of stuff to get in there. So,
but the referees have to know it.
Yeah, well, absolutely, of course. Yeah, absolutely. But they don't need to have a great knowledge of football, but they need to know the rules. We need to have a great knowledge of football. So, yeah, I mean, I think most people have a basic knowledge of it, of course, but I don't think we, as managers or coaches, know the rules as well as referees do, and maybe we should know the rules far better. But it's how it's been interpreted. It's not actually. I don't think it's about knowing the rules. It's how they're being interpreted.
Just finally, I mean, Ian Maxwell talking about this sort of avoiding this blame culture. Is it just inevitable that when managers feel that there have been wrong calls, and let's be honest, since football started, managers have blamed refereeing decisions. It's just part and parcel of football life.
It is. I mean, if Max is trying to, if Ian Maxwell is trying to get rid of the blame culture in Scottish football, well, good luck with that, because I've been in it 45 years, and it was just as blamish back then as it is now. So I do think that the people at the Premier League, managers, coaches, players, fans, are, I think they are peed off, shall we say, a little bit, because they thought the VAR was going to clear all this up, and it hasn't done.
Right, let's move on to all things national team. Scotland limbering up for their match with the Netherlands, if I can say it properly, tomorrow night. Thomas Duncan, what is the latest from the Scotland camp?
It's been a quiet week, Jonathan, hasn't it? I think that speaks to the kind of nature of where the squad is at the moment. It's a settled squad. They're confident. They're calm. It tends to makes it maybe slightly boring in the build-up for us and fans, but I think Steve Clarke knows his guys, and the only real bit of news we've had this week obviously is Grant Hanley pulling out, which is not really a great surprise given he's coming back from an Achilles injury and hasn't played the last couple for Norwich, I don't think. So they've opted not to call anyone in to replace him, which again just I think signals that they're happy with where they're at. John Carver was speaking to the media this week, interested, he said, I think the quote was, he'd be very surprised if anyone comes from the blue, talking about the likes of Harvey Barnes and Tino Livramento and all these guys. I think he said he'd be very surprised if someone comes from the blue and makes a squad, and that they've basically settled on the squad they'll take to Germany this summer. So I think, as I say, that just speaks to the settled nature of the side at the moment, and I expect to see a pretty familiar team against the Netherlands tomorrow night, barring the couple injuries we've got, which obviously Callum McGregor and Aaron Hickey at the moment.
Yeah, Ian, I'd almost forgotten that we'd actually played the Netherlands just before our Euro 2020 or Euro 2021, whichever you prefer, tournament experience, and that was in the Algarve, I think. Just before that, ended in a 2-2 draw, actually. And I was just looking at the Scotland lineup, and as Thomas suggests, there's with Steve Clarke at the helm, he tends to trust tried and tested players, and there's not been a huge amount of change since that team that drew 2-2 with the Netherlands. Craig Gordon was in goals, then there's Andy Robertson, Kieran Tierney, Liam Cooper, Jack Hendry. Callum McGregor obviously misses out this time because of injury. Ryan Christie, Stuart Armstrong, David Turnbull was in the team, Lyndon Dykes, James Forrest was in the team. But, the core of a team that we can kind of recognise as the one, more or less, that will probably kind of play tomorrow with a few changes. Who gets in your starting 11 tomorrow? Who would you like to see feature for Scotland tomorrow?
Well, I mean, again, I don't think you need to have a super duper knowledge of football to recognise we've got 7 players that I think everybody would agree, supporters, the manager, coaches, media, Hickey, Tierney, Robertson, McGinn, McTominay, Gunn and McGregor. If they're all fit, I think they'll all start. There's 7 starters. Not tomorrow, I mean, for the first game against Germany. I mean, maybe I'm biased. I'd like to see Lawrence starting. I think he deserves to start. I don't think he will, because it's Holland away in Amsterdam. I think it'll be one of the boys who can get about and put pressure on people. He's one I think has earned the right to start. Again, it's a tried and tested, and I think he'll just be keeping his fingers crossed. Not about tomorrow night, but Hickey has become a really, really big player for us. I think he's absolutely outstanding. McGregor is and has been a huge player for us. I think it's a matter of getting those 7 fit, and people are fighting for the other 4 positions to start again. And listen, it's really gutsy by Stevie, but the type of friendlies he's taken on just now, goodness me, he can't make them any harder. So he's not really that bothered about it. I mean, he'll want to win, no doubt about it, but the record isn't really important. It's about preparing for this pretty massive game against Germany in the summer.
Absolutely. Thomas, how fearful, I'm always so pessimistic sometimes when Scotland play, but always optimistic, but at the same time realistic that it's always a difficult challenge. As Ian says, Steve Clarke's picked some difficult encounters to help the team grow, is his feeling, obviously, but Amsterdam's always been a tough place to go. Obviously, Dutch, one of the great nations of football. As Ian mentioned at the top of the podcast, 20 odd year ago, we got an absolute hiding 6-0. Then I think it was around 2009 in a World Cup qualifier, we got beat pretty convincingly. It was 3-0, but I remember that night, I think I was there in Amsterdam.
We beat them 3-2 and 7-8 though, John.
I was 1 year old. I don't remember that, but it was quite a good goal at Archie Gemmill. I've seen that a few times, right enough.
So I've heard.
What's your feeling about the Dutch tomorrow, Thomas?
I'm going to stick my neck on the line and say this team aren't going to concede 6 goals. So there you go. But I think, obviously they're a good team. They've got Van Dijk, but it's still not a Dutch team like you maybe would have had even 10, 12 years ago. I don't think they're among the top tier of favourites for the Euros, and that would be England and France, in my personal opinion. But obviously, they've got huge quality. But I think Scotland, you're right. I think they were so disappointed with how they went, Scotland, in the last Euros, that they're determined to make sure that they arrive in that opening game against Germany having played the best opposition, so they know exactly what they're walking into. The atmospheres as well. They played away in France, played away in Spain in the qualifying group, played England as well. So that's 2, as I say, the favourites that they've ticked off. And I think it's not that the result doesn't matter. Of course it does, but I think as long as we put in a competitive performance, which I'm confident we will, then I think we can then move on to Northern Ireland and the friendlies in June and the start of the Euros, feeling like we could not have done any more. And if you want to put it another way, maybe in a manager's way, there's no excuses for the players. They turn up as best prepared as they possibly can be, and then hopefully attack the Euros and give put their best foot forward, which I don't think we did the last time we were at the Euros.
Let's hope for the best tomorrow night. Certainly live commentary on Sportsound on BBC Radio Scotland, and join me for highlights on Sportscene 10:40 on BBC One.
This is the Scottish Football Podcast.
Right, we always take a look at the Championship on a Thursday, and we're really getting towards the business end of the season now, and it is fascinating. Firstly, Ian, what did you make of last weekend's results? A bad defeat for Dundee United, you'd have to say, at Dunfermline Athletic, and then an opportunity missed by Wraith Rovers to go top of the table the next day, held to a draw by Queen's Park.
Well, the most surprising thing about the results was it shouldn't have surprised anybody. I watched the D-Night game on BBC Scotland on Friday night, and they were really, really poor. I think Jim's come out and agreed that, and I was on the text of their captain yesterday, and he was basically saying he couldn't complete a 10-yard pass, and he was just by Ross Dockery. So I would say Dunfermline, with all the players back, are a different animal. I think they're capable of going to run and finishing possibly in the top 4. But it's a big game for Dunfermline. If they can take the 3 points against Inverness at Tannadice, I think their next game's against Wraith. So they'll be 3 points clear with a better goal difference, which is almost 4 points clear. If they beat Wraith, they'd be 6 clear. And then that, for the first time, that would be a step towards the title. But it's the Championship, and who knows? And a big game for my old club as well, for Thistle up at Arbroath. I think they looked as if they were going to have a battle to even finish the playoffs. They got a good result last week. If they can manage to get 3 points at Arbroath, which is historically a difficult place to go, but it hasn't been this season, unfortunately, for Jim McIntyre and the Arbroath guys. But I think they would all but confirm top 4 if they could manage to win.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fascinating weekend, Thomas, wasn't it, last weekend? Wraith Rovers don't play this weekend, but Dundee United host Inverness Cally Thistle, and they can't afford any slip-ups. As Jim Goodwin was saying post-match to Dunfermline, that was probably their worst performance of the season at East End Park. And, if the Tannadice crowd don't like what they see in the early stages against Cally Thistle, that could be a sticky one as well, with Cally Thistle fighting for their lives in that playoff relegation spot currently.
Absolutely, and I think their home form has been an issue this season. Jim Goodwin said as much himself last week. He said we've not entertained our home fans enough, and when you look at the numbers as well, I think when you look at goals in the first half of games at Tannadice this season, home games for clubs, I think United are 6th in terms of the amount of goals in the first half. Part of that's down to the fact they don't concede too many. Part of that's also they don't score enough at home early on. I think they've conceded the first goal more times than they've scored it at Tannadice this season. And Jim Goodwin said this clearly in the press last week, that basically a lot of teams come set up to frustrate them. The crowd then get antsy, and that makes it difficult for the players. And so I think you're bang on. I think if they need to start well, they just need to start well against Inverness, because I think they'll try and make it difficult. They've got a draw at Tannadice already this season, so they need to, whatever it is that's holding them back at home, they need to try and get on the front foot, get on top of teams early and really put them under pressure, because as you say, if it's even 0-0 at half time, I can imagine things start to get a bit restless, and that just makes everyone's job a lot harder for Dundee United.
Yeah, and Dundee United obviously up against Wraith Rovers on March 30th at Tannadice. That'll be a huge match. Ian, Morton versus Dunfermline's big as well in the hunt for that final playoff position, especially with Airdrie not playing in the league this weekend. And Morton, suddenly, they were an express train and now on a poor run of form. I think it's 5 games without a win, 4 straight defeats. I guess it represents an opportunity for Dunfermline. It all represents an opportunity for Morton, but they've missed George Oakley, obviously, hugely.
Yeah, they have. I mean, there's no doubt the way they play gives them a focal point. They seem quite a streaky team now, that's pretty obvious. They had a terrible start to the season, quite a lot of injuries, then they went this tremendous run. I think they lost 5 in a row. I think the goal at Firhill in the last minute might have been the first goal they've scored in 5 games as well. So, I mean, Morton, after all their good work, need a positive result, or they're in danger of falling out of the playoffs. I mean, Queen's Park's a team that could come with a late run. Ayr United could come with a late run. Dunfermline, that's a hard one to call, that game. But Dunfermline, I know we were saying Dundee United were poor and edge on us, but they were poor. But I thought Dunfermline were really good in the first half, and they now have. You saw the changes James Hippie was allowed to make. I don't think they've had that for the first half of the season. They were missing so many defenders, centre backs. Yeah, I mean, I think there's rumours that Oakley will be back either this week or next week. He is a big player for them, although whether they should be quite reliant on him, I'm not so sure. But it's a tough one to call, that one, I think, as they all are.
They always are, aren't they? I mean, it is a run of 4 straight defeats for Morton, and they haven't scored in 4 of their last 5 matches. They did squeak a goal at the end there against Partick Thistle in injury time at the weekend, of course. As for Ayr United and Queen's Park, Ian, another interesting match. I was actually speaking to Scott Brown yesterday, and I mean, he's right, and we've spoken about it already. You're only ever sort of 2 games away from disaster in the Championship, 2 games away from glory, and if you just time it right, as we all know, you can kind of sneak into those playoff positions. And what have you made of the overall job that Scott Brown has made at Ayr United and that Callum Davidson's made at Queen's Park?
Well, listen, I mean, I don't think they've not that many years. Certainly, Scott's not in that many games. I think last week's result against Inverness was a really, really big one for them historically. Or certainly when I was there for 5 years, we didn't do particularly well at Inverness. Although they had a right good side in those days. I think he's done well. I think it'll be next year before you see them print what he wants to do. I think the chairman down there, the main thing will be for him to keep Ayr in the division. Albeit he's right, and you're right, if you do come with a run at the right time, you can fall into the playoff spots at the right side of the table. Just Queen's Park, I think Callum's really steadied. I didn't think it was rocket science what was needed. It needed 3 or 4 experienced players, and it needed a recognition. Yes, we want to play nice football, but sometimes, we want to play winning football. And I think Callum's done that. If they'd turned some of their draws into wins, they'd be approaching the playoffs. So, again, it just backs up your point where 2 or 3 wins or 2 or 3 losses can see you go up or down.
Just finally, before we go, a couple of other big games this weekend. Airdrieonians take on the New Saints in the final of the Challenge Cup. Thomas, how tough a game will that be for the Lanarkshire side? I was checking out the New Saints, Welsh team, top of the table in Wales. In fact, they're like unbeatable in Wales, more or less. I think they're on a 32-match unbeaten run this season, basically.
Yeah, 19 wins in a row. Always having to listen to people patronise the quality of Scottish football from down south, shall we say. Can I take a moment to perhaps cast aspersion on the quality of the Welsh top flight? Just to have a bit of a goal for no reason. But yeah, look, obviously they're runaway leaders in Wales. They win the title every season. They're going to win it again at a canter. They've not lost since the 1st of August, which includes obviously the run to this Challenge Cup final. So what Airdrie are going to get is a team that are full of confidence. Clearly, they can score goals. They do so in Wales for fun. If you look at the run to the final, beat Hibs under 20s 3-0, drew 2 all East 5, went through in penalties, thumped Arbroath 4-1, and then beat Falkirk, a good Falkirk side who are flying in League 1 1-0 in the semis. So, and they've clearly got some quality. I think they've got, Brad Young's their top scorer, who was on loan at Ayr a couple of seasons ago, last season maybe was it? He didn't set the header alight here. He was only here for a short time. I think got a couple of goals, and Declan McManus as well. They've got another player who's well used to playing in the Championship, good striker. So they'll be a good side. There's no question about that. I think they could be the first non-Scottish side to win this cup. And also, I think they played BK Hacken, who dumped Aberdeen out the Europa League in Champions League qualifying. They lost 5-1 in aggregate. Aberdeen lost 5-3 in aggregate. So it shows on their day that they're certainly a good side. And as I say, they're used to winning. So that goes a long way in football, confidence. But I'm sure at the same time, Airdrie will be confident themselves.
It'll be an interesting match, Falkirk Stadium on Sunday. Ian, what would it mean for Airdrie and Rhys McCabe to get some silverware?
Well, it would mean for Airdrie and Rhys McCabe that they could take my picture down at the tunnel at Airdrie, because I was the last manager to win it in 2001. And it was funny, I had a couple of my young players walking past it the other day there. It was a team with Owen Coyle and Sandy Stewart. And I said, look at that. He said, oh, is that you, Gaff? And I said, yeah. He says, I wasn't born then, which was sobering. I think that we share the stadium at Airdrie 2 nights with Airdrie, and so I'll get to watch them training on a Tuesday early evening, and young Rhys McCabe seems to know what he's doing. And one thing I think, particularly towards the end of a season, is that this Airdrie team won't run out of youthful exuberance and legs and running about the pitch. That's good for the league and good for this cup final. So I would fancy Airdrie, but my knowledge of Welsh football is not terrific, but I would fancy Airdrie.
On Sunday, it's Rangers versus Partick Thistle in the SWPL Cup final at Tynecastle. What sort of game are you expecting, Thomas? Obviously, Rangers, big favourites.
Yeah, I'm commentating on this one for Sports. I'm really looking forward to it. Partick Thistle, obviously under Brian Graham, who'll be playing the Saturday, managing a cup final on the Sunday, and he's done a terrific job getting Thistle into the top 6 in back-to-back seasons. They're obviously massively up against it, against Rangers, who are a full-time professional team. I think if you listen on our sister podcast, Behind the Goals, they spoke to Brian Graham this week, and he was really good at saying how the whole club of Partick Thistle, it's the club's first cup final, men or women, in 50 years. How they've been getting behind the team, how they're getting suits tailored, how the men's kit man is helping them out, given they usually humph the kit and all that on match days for the women's team, and how the whole club are just buying into it. Really, they're getting an extra training session at Firhill as well. I think on the Saturday they usually train at Peters Hill on half a pitch, no less, on a Tuesday and Thursday night. So if they were to win this, it would be one of the most incredible achievements in Scottish football, I think. And they did get a draw against Rangers early in the season, 0-0 in the SWPL, which was phenomenal. And then the other game between them was only 1-0. So they've got form for pushing Rangers all the way. But if you're looking at resources, quality of player, there should only be one winner. But I just really enjoy Brian Graham's attitude. He's when you listen to him speak, the way he speaks as a manager, as a coach, he just comes across as he does when you watch him on the pitch. He's determined, he's confident, and I expect his players at the very least to turn up on Sunday and not get overawed by the occasion. But it's obviously a big ask to overcome Rangers, who want to win all the trophies this season, men and women's team.
Yeah, huge game at Tynecastle. Obviously, Partick Thistle, a club very close to your heart, Ian, and Brian Graham as well. I think you were always very critical of him as a penalty taker, but he's obviously making a great fist of it as a manager.
Yeah, I don't listen to his interviews. I just tend to switch off when he starts talking, because he goes on and talks the biggest load of guff you've ever heard. But listen, he's done a terrific job with the girls' team, and as a boy and as a player, he's got to be up there with one of my best ever signings throughout my career, certainly in the top 50. But Yeah, I mean, terrific. It's a great achievement, and it will be a really tough game for the girls. Obviously, Rangers, as Thomas has said, they're full time. And Brian is exactly the same. I mean, I went to watch him a couple of times when I was still there, and he's exactly the same as a manager, a coach, as a player. He would fall out with his cranny to win. So that's the type of attitude that's kind of a dying breed in Scottish football. So good luck to him, and good luck to the Thistle girls.
It should be a cracker. That's all we got time for. Many thanks to Ian and Thomas Duncan, and thank you for listening. Sports Sound on BBC Radio Scotland will have commentary of the Championship on Saturday afternoon. And on Sunday, the SWPL final will be on Sports Sound from 1, and the Challenge Cup final between Airdrie and the New Saints will be live on BBC Alpha from 4. And remember, Sports Sound commentary of the Scotland game tomorrow night, and highlights at 10:40 on BBC One. Remember, we publish new episodes every weekday morning, so you can get your daily dose of Scottish football bright and early. So if you haven't done so already, just follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from, so you don't miss out. Scottish football, the gift that keeps on giving. Thanks for listening.
The Scotland Rugby podcast is now available every Tuesday. Join me, Andy Burke and Tom English. Just head to BBC Sounds and subscribe to the Scotland Rugby podcast.
It's just seismic stuff.
There's bucket hats as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is this a rugby podcast or is this a fashion podcast?
Why can't it be a bit of both?
Rugby. Let's get on to rugby.
There's a lot to be excited about.
Today's guest, John McGuigan.
Clubs are at the absolute bedrock of everything Scottish rugby's about.
The Rugby Sports Sound podcast from BBC Radio Scotland.
You cannot help but be so excited.
It's going to be the centre of the rugby universe.
BBC Sounds.